Thank you for tuning in to our Pecha Kucha Olympics video. In our Pecha Kucha, we will be discussing both the 1968 Winter Games held in Grenoble, France, and the 1968 Summer Games held in Mexico City, Mexico. This project was made by Danielle Sapori,
Brittany Bailey,
Emily Easter,
and Jessica Cloudis.
The 1968 Winter Olympic Games were held in Grenoble, France from February 6 to February 18th. Grenoble won the bid by winning rounds 1 and 3 against Calgary, Canada. The Games were opened by President of the French Republic Charles de Gaulle, and the torch was lit by 1964 figure skating medalist Alain Commot. This was the 10th occurrence of the Winter Olympic Games, and it included 35 events contested in 6 sports. 37 countries participated, with Morocco competing at the Winter Games for the first time in Grenoble, and East and West Germany sent independent teams to the Games for the first time. Prior to these Olympics, the biggest issue was over amateurism. However, the use of PEDs was becoming rampant. The International Olympic Committee produced the first doping list in 1967, and compulsory drug testing was first introduced in the 1968 Winter Games. This was also the first time that gender testing had become mandatory for athletes. These games have been credited with making the Winter Olympics more popular in the United States, likely due to ABC's extensive coverage of Peggy Fleming, who won the only U.S. gold medal. Fleming was the first American to win a gold medal since the 1961 tragedy of Sabina Flight 548, which killed the entire U.S. figure skating team. French favorite Jean-Claude Killy won 3 medals in all the alpine skiing events, but only after much controversy. Austrian Karl Schranz claimed that a mysterious man in black had crossed his path during the slalom, causing him to stop. Given a restart, he beat Killy's time, but a jury of appeal later disqualified Schranz for missing the 19th gate.
The bobsled events had to be scheduled very early in the morning before the sunrise. They ended right after dawn. This was because the track they were bobsledding on, La Alpe des Huez, was not designed with sufficient cooling. Therefore, the events had to be done before the sunrise so the heat from the sun would not melt the ice on the track. During these games, athletic endorsements became an issue among the athletes. The IOC threatened to ban the skiers who were wearing advertisements on their clothes and equipment. However, the skiers then threatened the IOC to all withdraw from the games. They came to a conclusion that the skiers could not be wearing any sort of advertisement while being interviewed or photographed. Oleg Protopopov and Lyudmila Belousova, a Soviet married couple, were 2-time champions in figure skating. The 40-year-old Italian, Eugenio Monti, conquered his 12-year fight in winning the 2-man bobsled, then 9 days after, won another gold medal in the 4-man bobsled. There were 35 events contested in 6 sports in these games. Norway won the most medals with 14 total. The Soviet Union came in a close second with 13 total. Unfortunately, the U.S. came in 9th with 7 total, one of those being gold, 5 silver, and 1 bronze. The Winter Games of '68 hold a few legacies. They were the first to be televised in color, which is a tradition that continues today. This was also the first Olympics in which the IOC distributed drug and gender testing for each of the competitors. This procedure is still performed each Olympics.
Unfortunately, tragedy struck before the Summer Games. 10 days before the Games were to open, students protesting the Mexican government's use of funds for the Olympics, rather than for social programming, were surrounded in the Plaza of Three Cultures by the army and fired upon. More than 200 protesters were killed and over 1,000 injured. Like stated, the 1968 Summer Olympic Games were held in Mexico City, Mexico. They ran from October 12th to October 27th and were opened with a ceremony by President Gustavo Diaz Ordaz. There were a total of 172 events in 20 sports, with 4,775 male athletes and 783 female athletes participating from 112 countries. The Summer Olympics of 1968 was a huge turning point for nation inclusivity. For the first time in history, the Games saw a Latin American host of the Olympics. Also, other countries like Barbados, Belize, Kuwait, Sierra Leone, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo participated in the Olympic Games for the first time. During the Games, one of the most controversial political moments of modern Olympics took place. Tommy Smith and John Carlos, 2 black sprinters from the USA, stood on the podium with raised fists after winning the gold and bronze medals of the 200-meter race. They stood on the podium with raised fists, representing Black power, to protest the racism that had been happening towards Black people in America. In addition to their raised fists, they bowed their heads, wore black scarves to represent Black pride, and wore no shoes to represent Black poverty. Both athletes were banned from the Olympics by the IOC.
Since it was the first time the Games had taken place in Latin America, it was the first time they took place at such a high altitude above sea level. The altitude was an advantage to sprinters and field athletes who thrived in the thin air. However, it was a hindrance to most long distance runners. African runners trained at a high elevation and fared well. Kip Keino, a distance runner from Kenya, suffered severe abdominal pains during the Games and, despite warnings from doctors, completed 6 long-distance races in 8 days. In his first final, his pain became unbearable and he collapsed on the infield with just 2 laps to go. He went on to win 1 gold medal and 2 silvers. Debbie Meyer, an American swimmer, was the first woman to win gold medals in 3 individual swimming events in one Olympics. Although she was suffering from a severe stomach infection, the 16-year-old refused medicine that would have disqualified her from the Games. She went on to win the 200, 400, and 800-meter races. Although the 1968 Summer Olympics were the most politically charged games since the 1936 Berlin Games, they were also some of the most unifying games in modern history. The United States fared well in Mexico City, taking number 1 in overall medal count with 45 gold and 28 silver. Mexico, despite all the protests for funds used supporting the Olympics, finished 15th.